how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Omelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. Hello and welcome. My name is Vikram Chandra and you're watching This World, a show that wraps weekly developments from around the world and keeps you on top of the biggest global stories. This week's biggest headlines have been coming from China. It seems to be facing some sort of a financial meltdown. The economy is not in the best of shapes. The GDP growth rate has slowed down. The debt is nearing the IMF's red line. Property giants are incurring huge losses. And youth unemployment is at an all-time high. These developments have really triggered a big question. Has China's growth story hit a roadblock? And if so, what is the reason and how long is it going to last? Is the government's policies to blame, or is it something else? Also on the show, the Hunter Biden legal drama has intensified, with reports suggesting that the US president's son could be put on trial. Why? Because the plea deal he filed seems to have collapsed. We'll tell you all about it a little later on the show. And also, can animal organs save human lives? Some scientists say yes, they've just transplanted a pig's kidney into a brain-dead person. What they discovered is truly startling. All of that lined up for you on the program today. But let's start by taking a look at China's economy. And China's economy, quite frankly, is in a bit of a mess. Every week, it seems to be facing new troubles. Every week, there's a new headline coming out about impediments that China is facing. The latest one should worry Xi Jinping. It says China is likely to miss its growth target of 5% this year. The prediction has been made by several major banking giants. JP Morgan Chase is just one of them. It has further lowered its full-year forecast. In May, the bank had predicted a 6.4% expansion. Last week, it lowered it much lower to 4.8%. So did Barclays. It has cut China's growth rate estimate to 4.5%. Further unversed, China's official target for this year is 5%, which means it's aiming for 5% GDP growth. But if we go by the wave of downgrades, it seems that China is not going to be able to meet its own targets. The timing of these downgrades is, of course, particularly interesting. They come amid a slew of disappointing economic data. Early this month, there were reports about China's Great Wall of Debt. According to a new Forbes report, China's overall debt, both in the public and in the private sector, has risen to a colossal $51.9 trillion. I repeat, $51.9 trillion. This is the highest level recorded in the last 27 years. Now, of course, China's economy has been growing, so debt will go up, but the present debt levels are almost 3 times the size of China's economy. And that's not even the worst part. Reports say that China's debt is inching closer to the IMF's red line. Let me explain. According to a report released by the National Institution for Finance and Development, China's household debt has increased from 61.9% at the end of last year to 63.5% in the second quarter of 2023. Now, this may be only a slight jump, but it has taken the debt closer to the International Monetary Fund's warning point of 65%, a level that indicates potential financial risk. Next, we have unemployment. It's also at a record high. Reports say that the urban employment rate for people between the ages of 16 to 24 has risen to 21.3%. Now, this figure is so bad that Beijing has decided not to release figures anymore. I'm not making this up. Look at what The Guardian states. China has suspended the release of youth unemployment figures. Why? Because it wants to improve and optimize labor force survey statistics. Now, I'm still trying to figure out what exactly that means. How do you improve and optimize statistics, especially if they are so bad? Well, I'm sure we'll find out. And then we come to the property sector. Reports say that China is facing a housing market slump. Home prices have been falling for 16 months straight. Land sales, which account for 40% of all local government revenue, have also collapsed. I have a report with me which says that sales of new residential properties in China have tumbled around 28% as compared to last year. And if we speak of investment in property development, which is a vital driver of both industrial and consumer demand, it sank 7.9% in the first half of this year compared to a year earlier. Analysts say this is a troubling sign of persisting weakness in industry. Now, what does all of this tell you? That China's property bubble could be bursting. That mighty real estate sector that was behind so much of Chinese growth for a period of time could be crashing. And this is worrying for China because this sector accounts for around 29% of the Chinese GDP. It accounts for around a quarter of domestic output, almost 80% of household assets. Around 100,000 companies operate in this sector. This makes it the nation's second biggest employer, providing around 27 million jobs to Chinese citizens. All of this could be under threat if the property bubble actually collapses. Now look, let's be fair and let's be clear on this. China has seen a major economic miracle for a long period of time. Look at the way the Chinese GDP has grown, the Chinese economy has grown. And yes, there will be ups and there will be downs. But the big question that some people are asking, have a lot of the ups of the last 10 to 15 years been because of something that was unsustainable? unsustainable investment, a wrong savings investment ratio, building of property and real estate and other assets that had no real demand for them. Other policies that have been faulty. Because if any of that is correct, then it's not cyclical. There's something structural there that could go wrong. And unemployment, of course, is particularly important because it could have political implications for one man, Xi Jinping, the person who's been under very muted attack. His draconian zero COVID policy and what that did, his bizarre decision to limit debt to developers, and his usual playbook of using large-scale stimulus measures to boost demand, perhaps unsustainably. Perhaps all of that led to a massive oversupply in many sectors. So let's now spend some time trying to figure out just what is going on in China. How bad are the problems there, and what could be the impact on the rest of the world? And for more on the situation in China, we're now being joined by Vishnu Vardhan from Singapore. He's Executive Director and the Head of Economics and Strategy, Asia and Oceania at the Mizuho Bank. Thank you so much, Vishnu, for joining us. When you're looking at China right now, it's suddenly beginning to seem almost as if the wheels are coming off. What's really going wrong there in China?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. And to be honest, we've been fairly concerned about China's situation for a while now. But what's really going wrong at this juncture is clearly the fact that the economy is in a state where simply providing liquidity via the banks isn't resolving some of the pre-existing solvency crisis. I mean, typically what we say is, look, this is a liquidity crunch, it's a liquidity situation. If we don't want it to, devolve into a solvency crisis, we should be very quick with liquidity. This time around is quite different because the property sector, big parts of it, are already in a bit of a solvency crisis. Hence, providing liquidity in and of itself doesn't solve the problems. And the problems that we're referring to here quite specifically pertain to a sheer loss of confidence. So the confidence deficit in the economy is mind-boggling. So consumers are not spending. Very, very critically, they have lost confidence in the property sector. So they're not buying property, which means the property developers are all in problem. And that has seized up cash flow in the economy because the wider economy, over 30% of the economy, whether through direct business or ancillary business, depends on the property sector. And that includes local governments who rely on land sales by property developers for their revenues.
So, there's one thing. So,
yeah, sure.
let me just try and break that up a little bit to help people understand this from a distance. Look, there will be cyclical ups and downs in all economies. It'll happen in China, it'll happen in America, it'll happen in India. The question that I think a lot of people are asking is there something more structural that is happening in China? And I'm not to put too fine a point in it, a lot of people are also saying that what essentially happened in that decade of spectacular growth that we saw in China, 2005 to 2015, and that period onwards, a lot of it was just inflation, like they were just pumping in money. People were building real estate left, right, and center. Infrastructure was being built, which may not have had a use. And now, frankly, it's a bubble that is starting to pop. That would be the doomsday scenario. Do you think there's any chance that that is what's happening?
This time, there's a huge structural component to it. I don't think it's isolated structural or completely cyclical. But the three parts of the structural, one has got to do with what you said, which is we've had more than a decade of just the kind of mind-boggling credit push. So very high leverage in the economy means that they are now struggling to boost growth further via credit. You also have a demographics that shifted, but structurally, the other big thing here is that there seems to have been a change in terms of the policy.
So let's break that down further. I was talking about some of the wheels of the Chinese economy that have been ticking. All of this has also been predicated on a lot of foreign companies coming and setting up their FDI investment into China, and China as the manufacturing engine of the world. Chinese exports, and that has been the real driver of the Chinese economy. If China is fighting with half the world, as it seems to be doing right now, then the issue is people are diversifying away, moving away, and if that export engine starts to dry up, it compounds the problem then.
That's certainly a point to be made. In the near term, though, what it just means is that it's going to be fairly disruptive in the sense that costs will have to go higher in the near term, just as we're looking for alternatives trying to scale up, so on and so forth. So in the very near term, apart from situations where there's explicit restrictions or punitive tariffs on trade, China might still retain some of the runway of advantages it has built up over the years. But that can erode very quickly, as you rightly point out. I mean, the geopolitical situation, along with the domestic political control over the socio-economic situation, these two factors may be the biggest factors that would, I think, retard China's growth potential. So that's where we see the risks residing. So we're not so fussed about whether China will do 5% or not this year, because our worry is that they will struggle to get underlying growth above 4%. And that remains a reality to be dealt with.
But the real doomsday scenario for China, the real scary situation for the leaders of China would, of course, be unemployment and youth unemployment, and that going into social strife of some sort. I mean, that's of course what they are most concerned about. Now, if you start having youth unemployment numbers reaching levels which are so bad that the Chinese don't want to publish them anymore, then there's always that risk of political instability, which for the Chinese Communist Party is the worst possible thing to happen.
I cannot agree with you more. I think everything about the Chinese Communist Party is about control. Having control means they need financial, economic stability, they need social stability, and they need political stability. And you touched on the aspect of social stability, which also has got very tight linkages to the economic stability and the economic well-being. So these two are inextricably linked. And you're right that this poses a very dangerous situation.
Vishnuvardan, thank you so much for joining us. It really helped us clarify to a great extent what's actually happening inside China right now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Moving to the United States now, the legal troubles for the American president's son, Hunter Biden, appeared to be nearing an end last month. He had reached a plea deal, one that would have kept him out of jail. For a moment there, it appeared as if Hunter Biden could put all of his legal woes behind him as his father prepares, perhaps, for a return to power next year, or at least for an election campaign. Instead, that deal has fallen apart, and a special counsel has been named to take over the case. It has left the interests of the US president's son increasingly at odds with those of President Biden. So what's next in the Hunter Biden saga? Will he be put on trial? Let's do a deep dive. The probe into Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings, drug use and finances could go on for months. Prosecutors are expecting that the case will go to trial. The U.S. Justice Department has escalated its investigation into President Joe Biden's son, and it has named a special counsel amid allegations of tax fraud and illicit overseas business deals. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, appointed prosecutor David Weiss, who has been investigating Hunter Biden since 2019 on low-level tax and gun charges. Now let's rewind a bit to get you on track with what's happened so far. The investigation began in 2018 and was originally centered on Hunter Biden's finances related to business dealings. It included consulting work on behalf of certain Ukrainian and Chinese companies. During a time when Hunter was addicted to drugs and alcohol. But David Weiss shifted focus on finding out whether Hunter Biden failed to report all of his income and whether he lied on a form for gun purchase by denying the fact that he was a drug user. Remember, the prosecutor in charge was Donald Trump appointed. In June this year, the US Justice Department charged Hunter Biden with 2 misdemeanor tax offenses for failing to pay more than $200,000 in income taxes in 2017 and 2018. He was also charged with a felony firearm offense for making a false statement related to a gun purchase. According to the Washington Post, Hunter allegedly answered no to a question on a federal form about whether he was using illicit drugs. And this is in contrast with what he wrote in his own memoir, that he was using crack cocaine that year. As Hunter Biden's case came to light, Republicans tried to link his legal woes directly to his father, the President of the United States of America. Hunter Biden reached an agreement with prosecutors to avoid jail time in exchange for pleading guilty to the 2 tax charges. In addition, he said he will go to an addiction counseling program, stay clean for 2 years, and not own guns. But despite reaching an agreement, Hunter's plea deal fell apart in late July. The federal judge expressed legal and constitutional concerns about immunity provisions. So what happens next? Talks to revive the plea deal seem to be at a standstill. And as I said, the Justice Department now expects that the case will go to trial over the charges filed against Hunter Biden. And this is in contrast to the earlier position where both sides had apparently been hoping to avoid a politically charged trial. But that seems to have been held up now by Hunter Biden's demand for blanket immunity from further and future prosecution. Vice has vowed to indict Hunter Biden on the tax charges, and reports say that Vice could also use his authority to levy additional charges in the case. But it's unclear how Vice will actually proceed. What will the case mean for Joe Biden's 2024 campaign? A trial against Hunter Biden would cast a long shadow in Joe Biden's re-election campaign. For one, it could draw away attention from Donald Trump's own legal problems. Democrats worry that Trump will try to exploit this the same way he exploited Hillary Clinton's private email server during the 2016 presidential campaign. One thing's for sure, the American president's son will remain under scrutiny by the Justice Department while Joe Biden's re-election campaign is underway. So we will keep you updated with the latest on that particular matter. Our next story is huge and could potentially provide a new lease on life for thousands of people. Doctors in New York have transplanted a kidney from a pig into a human, and it seems to have worked. The modified pig kidney transplanted into the human has been successfully functioning for more than 30 days. Now, this is a big milestone in the field of organ transplantation, a promising sign as doctors around the world race to learn how to use animal organs to save lives. Surgeons at the New York University Langone Transplant Institute announced a milestone this week. This is the longest that a pig kidney has functioned in a person, albeit a deceased one. The pig kidney was transplanted into the body of a brain-dead human patient over a month ago. It began with the transfer of a pig kidney into the body of Maurice Moore Miller. Miller had died suddenly at the age of 57. His body was donated to science by his family. Researchers say that they will continue to monitor the kidney in Miller's body for a second month. But so far, at least, the vital organ has been found to be functioning normally. The pig kidney, it has to be said, has been genetically modified to omit a gene that produces biomolecules that human immune systems attack and reject. Now, this is a big breakthrough for the team of doctors because they eventually hope to try this in living patients as well. Now, so far, the results reportedly indicate that at least in the case of kidneys, just eliminating the gene that triggers that hyperacute rejection may be enough. So this, along with clinically approved immunosuppressive drugs, could successfully manage the transplant in a human for optimal performance, and potentially in the long term, scientists are hoping that cross-species transplants could help the countless people waiting for a life-saving organ. Reports say that more than 103,000 people in the US currently need organ transplants. Out of this, 88,000 require kidneys alone. At home in India, government reports say that 2 lakh people need kidneys annually, but only 8,000 receive it. The numbers shared by the Health Ministry are concerning because every 10 minutes, at least one more person is added to the waitlist of people who are in the need of an organ donation. More than 3 lakh people are already in the waitlist, and at least 20 people die each day while waiting for a kidney. India, incidentally, ranks 3rd globally on the number of transplants conducted every single year. Now, consider what the implications of that pig kidney actually operating successfully for a month could mean. Because there's no shortage of pig kidneys. If this works and that elimination of that gene is successful, then technically and theoretically, there could certainly be an infinite supply of kidneys that will become available. That entire wait list could disappear. In short, pig to human kidney transplants, if successful, could be big news. It could be great news. Scientists hope to eventually progress far further. They hope to be able to use animal organs to save living humans in other areas as well. Researchers hope to solve this organ needs crisis with a futuristic approach. They do envision a future where animal organs or completely artificial kidneys could be used for transplantation. And if this works, then it's really going to be painting a very different picture and giving a lot of hope to people on that kidney waitlist. And that's all we have time for this week. We'll see you back next week again with a fresh lineup of stories and big analysis on all of them. I'm Vikram Chandra. You've been watching This World on WION World is One.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
A new drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hi, I'm Alison LaGrange, and you're watching eClub.
Here are the nominees for Achievement in Music.
People are totally wrong who keep telling me that, oh, you're multitasker. I'm not.
Awards and fashion shows are in full swing.
Seeing a young, black man, directing a feature film, I saw myself in him.
Engage with us. Let us know what you'd like to see on the show and celebrities that you'd like us to feature.
What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative voices.
India will be a significant pole in the universe of AI going forward.
India is walking tall, India's stature is different, India's voice is being heard.
And the biggest newsmakers.
This is just a start. Tokyo, we won one bronze. Paris, we won a rocket. Good to see that, women cricket is getting more excited and everybody is looking up to that.
And these stories need to be told. And they are guided by the compass of their conscience.
From India, for the world, the India Story, the show for the global citizen.
know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Omelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade. And they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Russia has just unveiled a new type of weapon. Nicknamed the Death Ray, Moscow wants to use this directed energy weapon to fry Ukrainian drones and knock them out of the skies. Especially in the aftermath of the events of the last few weeks, where Ukraine has managed to pierce the Russian defenses and has staged some audacious attacks on Russian infrastructure. Moscow has been on the hunt for new and cheaper ways to knock out the Ukrainian drones. Shooting down drones that could be as cheap as about $20,000 American with anti-air defense missiles that are worth several times the cost of the drones is one way of running out of resources and losing the war. So Russia has now begun using its directed energy weapons to take the sting out of Ukraine's drone warfare. Electronic warfare is at the center of the Russian war in Ukraine. And not for the first time is Russia resorting to the use of electronic systems to nullify the Ukrainian weapons. On the 15th of August, Russia unveiled its latest version of the microwave cannon that can knock out enemy aircraft and drones within a range of 10 kilometers. And according to the Russian state media, this new microwave cannon that is mounted on the chassis of the Buk anti-aircraft missile system consists of a powerful relativistic oscillator, a dish antenna, a control and monitoring system, and a transmission system. And it is capable of providing a 360-degree perimeter defense. The repeated drone strikes by Ukraine, such as the one that was attempted over the Kremlin on the 3rd of May, and the drone attacks that were staged on Moscow's central business district,
have necessitated that Russia must nullify Ukraine's ability to strike deep inside the Russian borders. And it is for this that Russia will increasingly rely on its death ray microwave cannons. But the concept of using directed energy weapon systems is not new. Countries such as the United States, China, France, United Kingdom, Israel, India, Pakistan, Turkey and Iran are in the process of developing military-grade directed energy weapons. Instead of a solid projectile, directed energy weapon systems use lasers, microwaves, particle beams and sound beams to destroy enemy targets. Consider this: the United States in 2014 deployed the AN/SEQ-3 laser weapon system on the USS Ponce warship for field testing. In 2018, a $150 million contract was given to Lockheed Martin for the production of 2 Helios laser units. The Russians too have their own laser-based anti-air defense and anti-satellite weapon called Peresvet. Introduced in 2018, a total of 5 of these directed energy laser systems are active at this moment. In warfare, technological superiority trumps almost every other factor. And the next few